On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk selling from Facebook and the shifting market. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 351, 6% for marketing.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Just Add Power, the global leader in video over IP solutions with systems that give you easy installation, unmatched scalability, and outstanding performance.
Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I am pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Dennis Holzer. He's the CEO of Powerhouse Alliance just over the lake. How you doing, Dennis?
I am terrific. Thanks for having me, and good to see you, Matt and Jason.
Good to see you, my friend. Then the Jason that he's referring to is Mr. Jason Knott. He is the Chief Content Officer at CE Pro. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. All right, gentlemen, we are going to kick off today's show with a story that comes to us from CE Pro. A 21-second Facebook video has resulted in a $30,000 installation. Insight Security out of Alabama posted one of those quick little 21-second videos of a mantle mount TV install, pulling it down, doing the swivel, putting it back up, all those fun things that everybody loves to do with the mantle mount product. And subsequently, fairly quickly, they had somebody reach out after seeing that and went, "Oh, that's really cool. Can we look at that for this house I'm building?" And it turned into, the domino effect of Taylor's business acumen to where he was able to convert that lead into a lovely $30,000 project, and said that he's getting additional leads again out of that super simple, not produced 21-second video, which I love seeing stories like this, because if you search anything on social for like technology and stuff, it's not typically a basic video. It's usually some guy who's like, "Hey, this is Bob, and let me show you how to mount my TV," which I don't think those help us gain sales at all in any way, shape, or form. Dennis, this is obviously really, really cool to see, but it brings a bigger question in. We have been talking about social media and leveraging social media for years, and yet it seems that these stories are still rare. You see a lot of people investing a lot of time and money into Facebook, into Instagram, into TikTok. And I don't see or hear, and maybe Jason, you can chime in on this as well, but I don't see a lot of people generating attributable leads to those things. It may be an additional thing of like, "Oh, I also saw your ad here." But it's pretty rare to see an actual quality lead come out of social media. Are we as an industry, are we leveraging social media well enough, or are we still kind of just playing with it?
I think we're still playing with it. I think everybody, if you ask anybody in the industry, they say we need to have it. Mm-hmm. But if you give them a follow-up question and say why, you're going to get a lot of blank stares. Social media is important. Why? I don't know. And that's what happens is that. And the other thing, Matt and Jason, I think you'll agree that so often when you see a lot of these things, you see a product.
Yeah.
You see on social media or Facebook, they're showing a product. The difference in this one, and I think this is very important, this is a product in its environment and what else goes along with it. And I think that's where the derailment is here, that on a lot of the social media and Facebook, you're looking at one product and people really, it's us. who needs to get the story out that this product does this in this environment. And we're not doing a good job. And I think that's a lot because we don't understand social media very well. I will tell you, there's a lot of these video companies popping up that are trying to push this, where they'll do videos for you and it encompasses everything. And I think that's important. And, you know, the internet, it's a great thing, but it's dangerous. And when, you know, when it's not presented correctly, or again, in the environment, how many, and Matt, you would know this as well as anybody, how many people might call you and say, hey, I saw this, I'd like to have this in my house.
Yeah.
And they think it's, you know, that product, and it is that product. But again, often, you know, if you're talking about some of these products, you know, with a motorized mount, you probably should have some good networking in your house and different things that go along with it to make it a lot better. So I think that's the anomaly here, that this guy showed it in its environment. And I think that's where we're missing the boat, that as much as we know about social media is how much we still don't know about social media.
Yeah, some of the things that come to mind for me on this is, one is, I think we're past the point where I hear from integrators who say, oh, my clients aren't on social media. I used to hear that a lot 10 years ago. And it's like, okay, well, I guess none of your clients are brain surgeons because those guys are on social media too. But the thing that's missing, to your point, Matt, is the nurturing of that lead, or the nurturing of that person. So this reminded me of, I guess it was about 10 years ago, I can remember talking to the Mantle Mount guys who were super excited because one of the Jonas Brothers had posted a video of his motorized Mantle Mount TV, and they got tens of thousands of leads. Now, they were all 16-year-old teeny bopper girls who had seen the Jonas Brother video, but it ended up being bad for them because they go, we had no mechanism in place whatsoever to handle all of this incoming traffic noise, in essence, is what it was that was coming in. And so even in this case, I mean, I think this integrator's, I think it's this awesome story. I think he's lucky because he probably doesn't have a nurtured campaign set up where they're going to see the video, give the contact information, have a follow-up with some questions to basically qualify that lead before he wastes his time picking up the phone and calling whoever it was that responded to that video. It's not as simple as it sounds. You know, I talked to integrators who were at CD Expo, like, oh my God, we were taking videos of the folding TV, you know, and we're number one in Instagram now, and those sorts of things. That's awesome, but then it's the next step.
Yeah.
You know, what is that next step of converting that person into a verified lead?
Well, and if I can put on my social media hat for a minute, the fact that this was a mantle mount, I think, likely really, really helped. If he had just shown a really cool installation in a room, it's still just a TV on the wall. As much as we as the industry know there's so much stuff that went into making that happen, not everyone has seen a mantle mount. So when you do sell one and you pull it down and you do the whole thing, people just have this like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So I'm sure that helped a little bit. I think the one thing that I see with the marketing aspect in general is, to your point, Jason, there's been a thing in marketing for as long as I've ever learned about it, heard about it, followed it, tried to utilize it, that you have to have an incredibly high touch point before you get any reaction from your potential client, right? So if you were doing mailers, you had to send out something like 12 mailers before someone would see it and remember it, right? Like that was a very common thing in print advertising. Social's the same way. You can swipe through stuff forever, and it takes seeing that same name and those same projects multiple times before somebody sees it and goes, oh, that's really, really cool. as much as some people in the channel have gotten pretty good at putting stuff out there, are we still not grasping this the same way that the designers do? Because when I check when I look at my Instagram feed, it is a couple of things. One being home design, just because I'm fascinated by really nice architecture. And some of those designers do a phenomenal job. And a lot of them do an absolutely terrible job. And when I see the AV community, the majority fall into that doing a terrible job. Do we need to be outsourcing this? Has social media progressed past what the average mom and pop shop can do?
Yeah, and I'll make it a little bit broader than when you're just defining social media here. I'll call it marketing.
Yeah.
And CE Pro is a sister publication, Security Sales and Integration, that focuses on the professional security market. The average security company spends 6% of their expenses on marketing. Now, it's a dog eat dog business.
Yep.
It's a different type of business, and I understand that, and they're doing that to generate leads. But I think that integrators need to do what I was saying before, is maybe they need to have a marketing expenditure, one on, as you say, how to maybe properly create social media and get that buzz, but then the conversion factor.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be some sort of expenditure or some sort of operation put in place to be able to convert that. I'll call that marketing. The other thing that's kind of hamstringing the whole thing is guys are so busy, and it's kind of what our next story is, what we're going to talk about. They're so busy, they don't need to do what we're talking about for the most part. They're not out there seeking. I think I've seen, you said 12 times on a direct mail.
Yeah.
I think I'd seen something about TV commercials. It's something like 7 times.
Yeah.
Before it's a 7, they have to see it 7 times before they register and recognize that, oh, I should be buying those donuts or whatever it might be. So, but I think it's marketing in general. And I think that the industry has not needed to market. We're in a great position where they don't need to market, but it would be great for them to be able to have some sort of way to convert those things into viable leads. And I think that's where they should put their focus.
That's a good point. All right, gentlemen, let's change topics, as you alluded to there, Jason. This comes to us from Residential Systems, and actually our guest from last week, the Bronx brothers, Mr. Todd Anthony Puma and Mark Feinberg. The shifting market, high-end and entry-level jobs keep coming in, but mid-sized projects seem to be disappearing. Todd and Mark in this article allude to something that, gosh, we've talked about on this show, on the commercial side of AVNation for years, that there is a erosion of the middle market. Todd says that typically their entry, some of their projects that typically would have been in the $40,000 to $50,000 range are now in the $25,000 to $40,000 range. Mark is saying that he's seen a lot of their projects become simpler, and just a smart TV and a sound bar and a wireless subwoofer, opposed to a universal remote and a control system, a lot of times eliminating video distribution. All of those things that we used to rely on across the board they're disappearing. Jason, let me come back to you and start with you on this one. Is there anything that can save the middle market? Or because again, as I said off the top, I remember talking to Harry Mead in the commercial space about the middle market dying like 8 years ago. At least we've talked about it on this show for years, that the middle market just keeps shrinking. Is there anything that's going to save that?
I think there is, and I think that the what I see, if you really, let's kind of break down the market for a second. We have this DIY space that is out there that I won't even call the entry level space, because it's DIY.
Yep.
That builds huge awareness for the channel and for smart home. Most 99.9% of integrators don't even touch any sort of a DIY solution for their customer base. Then, as we've seen, the high end is very well insulated. there's these projects, as they mentioned in the article. This is a great article, by the way. I love this article, talking about how their bigger projects are just getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Now we find this area in the middle that most integrators aren't serving. And when you say the market is, will it save the market? I think integrators aren't even trying to address that market. Most of them are trying to continue to focus on the affluent, high end of the space. Nobody's really doing repeatable, smaller. I mean, I should say nobody. Very few integrators are out there doing repeatable, smaller projects in, like, I'll say, like that $10,000 range.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this before. When I just had my house up in New Hampshire, I couldn't get an integrator to do the $10,000 project.
Yeah.
The 4 TVs and the cameras, nobody wanted it, even though there was recurring revenue built into it and everything, because they're too busy. Why should they do that when they got a $50,000 job sitting on the side? So I think that this market, that market, the middle market, is going to be huge. And I do think that integrators should focus on it. I don't have that business model in my mind. I think it might have related to some sort of a retail play that's going to have to feed that mechanism. I don't know. Or to what we were talking about a second ago, social media, some sort of a broader base thing that's going to attract that. But I do think that that's a viable market, but most guys are ignoring it.
Yeah, you're not wrong on that. Dennis, is this a shift in the market, or is this an evolution of technology? Because I think one of the largest drivers of the disappearance of this market is that the tech has evolved. We don't need to distribute video to 4 TVs anymore, because it's way more cost effective to put a smart TV, a streamer, and a wireless cable box behind the TV. You don't need to centralize that. And half the time, it's just going to be easier to function without that. Is tech the major driver on this?
The one thing we're all not looking at, and having been in this industry, we're so used to it. Every year, all of these products decrease by 20% in cost. So you got to start there and understand that, a 60-inch TV that was $4,000 or $5,000 3 or 4 years ago is under $1,000 now.
Yeah.
So some of it's not that the market disappeared, it's that the cost of that market has shifted downward because of price. That's first of all. Second of all, you're right. In technology, technology is the greatest thing and it's the worst thing in the world. It's the greatest thing that we have made it easier. And I think, Matt, if you go back several years, that people had to put in a universal remote control if they wanted to do a lot of different things in different places.
Yeah.
Well, now they can do it much easier. And, and this is, and I was going to say it in the last segment, and I'm going to say it now. We are a big, big, big part of the problem. And what I mean by that, and Jason, you couldn't say the word any better, marketing, marketing, marketing. We have all lived in a foxhole, in my opinion, over the last 3 years. Business has been plentiful and integrators are backed up. The one thing most integrators don't do today, and this is my opinion, they ought to take a piece of their marketing, and God forbid they ought to contact clients they've done business with.
Yeah.
They're looking for new business. They're looking for new business. They're looking for new business. How about the customer who wanted an 85-inch, but it was out of their price range 4 years ago or 5 years ago, so they put in a 60, and now they have a 1080p 60. How easy is it to call that customer and say, hey, we put a 60-inch in your house 4 years ago. We can put an 85-inch TV in your house today, which your room can handle, at less than we put that 65-inch TV in, and it's 4K. And so we walk away. We're so happy that we got the job and we did what we were supposed to do. there's a gold mine, in my opinion, hanging from the trees, and I'm talking about very low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Need I say networking? Have we all used networking in the last 3 or 4 years? I mean, how difficult was it for installers to get networking jobs over the last 3 or 4 years? Everybody's staying home because of COVID. And if you would contact, and we are actually, I'm in the process of having a flyer drawn up that we can give to our dealers that they can send out to their past customers saying, hey, now we do surveillance cameras. We have TVs, 85-inch TVs starting at $11.99. And I think we're just missing the opportunity. And as I said, because of the way prices are decreasing and decreasing, I mean, none of us are too young to remember that a $25 HDMI cable that today is $2. So I think that's really the bigger part of where we're thinking these $50,000 jobs have gone away. They're getting bigger or smaller. The industry has made them smaller just before we do anything. And technology has made them even smaller because now we can do so many more things with less products. And the last thing I'm going to say is, how many times 5 years ago when people said, oh, we need a whole house remote, and then they realized that they were always using that remote in their family room.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, now we don't need a whole house remote control system, a Control 4 or RTI. We need a remote for the family room, and one that can control everything in there, which is significantly cheaper than, we were always selling blinds and lighting years ago and never putting it in. Now we are. But again, I think the industry, first and foremost, has separated the levels of the jobs that are out there.
Is there anything to the client difference? And what I mean by that is this is something that we deal with internally in my company. That client that Jason that you mentioned at 10K, they are as demanding, if not more demanding, than a $50,000 project client. And I've always attributed it to that's all they, and this is going to sound terrible, but that's all they have. They have 10 grand, and it is a stretch for them to put that $10,000 into that basement entertainment room. So they are going to question everything, nitpick on everything, because to them, it's a really big deal. Whereas the client who's dropping 50K around his pool, not that the 50K isn't important to them, not that they care any less, but it just seems to be an easier project and an easier client. Obviously, there are outliers that prove all of that wrong, but in our experience, that's been really typical. It is how much of it is that, to get a client from 10K to 12K is just a massive headache and not worth the time when, as you said, you can go do a $50,000 job with less headaches.
I'm sure that's a contributing factor. I mean, I'm sure that's all part of it. And to Dennis's point, I think it was 10 years ago now. I did an analysis where I looked at the Model T from Henry Ford, and said, if automobiles had taken the same price trajectory that consumer electronics had taken, what would it cost for a Model T today? And it was like $3. The original price was like $600, I think. So this industry is unfortunately snake bitten by that from a technology standpoint, that does progressively drive them down. And I think you make a good point about the customer. But I guess the way to look at it is, Matt, is maybe that $10,000 customer 3 or 4 years ago was a DIYer, probably, who may not even have called you. And so you're right. It probably that money means a lot to them, but they could be a persnickety client, I guess.
Yeah, it's entertaining to go through those differences across the board. But obviously, you got to do that for yourself and your own clientele. All right, gentlemen, let's leave it there. Thank you both so much for joining us. Jason, if people want to connect with you, learn more about CE Pro, where can they do that?
They can go to cepro.com and they can subscribe for free to our newsletters and to the magazine, the monthly magazine. They can follow me on Twitter at Jason W. Knott.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mr. Holzer, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Powerhouse Alliance and your network of distribution houses, where can they do that?
They can do that on www.powerhousealliance.com. If they want to connect with me personally, dholzer@powerhousealliance.com. And we're up to 67 locations across the country, and we'd love to have the opportunity to serve you. And we thank you. And thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for joining us. All right. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and most other social channels, except for TikTok, because we don't do that. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.